Steve, I know you've been digging in really deep into what that means for the Air Force in particular. What are we talking about? I know they've looked at reorganizing some money and reorganizing some focus, but what would an 8% cut to Air Force programs mean right now?
So one thing that I thought was interesting is when Secretary Hegseth has discussed this, he's discussed cuts in the context of what he referred to as woke Biden-era policies, things like diversity, equity, inclusion programs, climate change programs, which he referred to as climate change BS. That's clearly been a target of ire for the administration, and they want to cut those out. However, if you were to cut 8% of the Air Force's budget, that would be $15 billion. Space Force, getting close to $2.5 billion. There's not $17 billion of DEI and climate change spending in the Department of the Air Force's budget. So what is the Air Force doing? They've been trying to cut older and outdated planes from their fleet for years, talking things like A-10 Warthogs, the attack planes that were heavily used in Iraq and Afghanistan. And there are some F-22 Raptors that are older, they aren't combat capable, they're trying to retire those. And that's led to major clashes between the Air Force and the Hill over the years.
I was going to say, so why can't they cut those?
Yeah.
These have been fiercely defended by folks on Capitol Hill, and you've got to imagine that as these come up again, even with Republicans backing President Trump, backing some of these Department of Government efficiency initiatives, there's still going to be these fights over, are you actually going to take the A-10 out of my district? Are you actually going to take these jobs out of my district to have savings and reassign it somewhere else?
Which is funny to see this happen as an administration-only effort so far. They can fight about this as much as they want internal to the Pentagon and the White House, but that doesn't change the battle lines that exist in Washington more permanently, which is between those institutions and Capitol Hill.
Yeah, one thing that the dispute between the Air Force and Congress has thawed somewhat in recent years, and the Congress has allowed the Air Force to start retiring some of those A-10s. The service is hoping to have the fleet retired by the end of the decade. However, the F-22s is kind of a multi-year dispute now. So the Air Force hopes to accelerate the divestment of some of these older planes. There's a lot of there's some F-15Cs, some of the earliest F-15s that are really kind of ragged right now. So yeah, it'll remain to be seen whether the administration goes for more aircraft cuts as part of this effort.
So how long were those fights to get to that point where Congress is actually agreeing with those? That took like several weeks, right?
Yeah. They hashed it out over the weekend. No.
I mean,
that
is the timeline we're suddenly looking at here. They're looking at the fiscal 2026 budget. They want to have these cuts. They want to put it in place. Congress is going to start talking about what those levels should be in just the next few months here. And for a pretty significant turn to be cutting, again, new administration, new priorities, you understand there are going to be some adjustments, but if they're really talking about pulling 8% from every department and reassigning it to border security, do we even know what those priorities are going to be besides border security?
We don't exactly know what the priorities are, and just to show how much uncertainty there is around this, Steven Feinberg, who's a billionaire investor who has a lot of holdings in defense companies and is nominated to be the number 2 in the Pentagon, the deputy secretary who is usually in charge of managing all of these cuts, or would be in charge of that, including both budget and personnel. He appeared before Capitol Hill this week for his confirmation hearing. Democratic senators asked repeatedly about these. What do the personnel cuts mean? What do the budget cuts mean? And he had no answers, both because he's not in the position he's nominated to yet, but also just because he didn't seem to know what the clarity would be. And I think that's where we are right now. We're in the early stages, and we're not necessarily sure, even for those in the positions that they're going to be managing these cuts from, what they will lead to.
So who do we think has those answers at this point? Because we've talked about this some. There is a level of frustration, not just at the lowest levels here, not just at the rank and file folks, but even among higher levels of Defense Department, VA, other agencies, of just not knowing who's making these calls. I mean, is it just Elon Musk and the White House? I mean, how well do you think Air Force officials are read in? How well do you think any senior defense officials are read in? Or is this edicts coming from the White House and they're just trying to field the balls as they bounce around the infield?
Well, I think there's going to be more turf battles because of that exact dynamic that you bring up. It is largely right now an effort being run by Elon Musk and Doge to cut these positions. That's the personnel area. But to a certain extent, there's also buy-in from OSD, the Secretary of Defense's office. That's being led at the highest rungs of the Pentagon within Secretary Hegseth and his team. But it also has some input from Capitol Hill, the Senate Armed Services Committee, and the Republicans who are running that now after they secured a majority last year. So there are inputs coming in from different areas, but as Elon Musk's team becomes more and more influential and moves without caution, that's going to lead to more friction between these traditional Washington entities like the Department of Defense and the team that he's running ad hoc or unofficially running ad hoc out of the White House.
I think there are some Air Force programs that are going to see a boost out of this reprogramming. Okay. The Secretary Hegseth's memo put collaborative combat aircraft off limits for cuts. These are the autonomous drone wingman program that the Air Force has been working on for F-35s in the future NGAD, Next Generation Air Dominance fighter platform. It was a big priority for former Secretary Kendall. I expect that to continue going forward. Nuclear modernization is also off limits. That will most likely include the Sentinel ICBM that's going to replace the Minuteman IIIs, which its future anticipated future costs are going way up. But also perhaps the B-21 Raider, the new stealth bomber. So I think those are a few examples of programs that might see some boosts as a result of this.